Welcome to episode 105 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies, plus tips, apps, and gear. I'm your host, Dave Ginsburg. And this week, this is a special episode. I interviewed Joe Kissell. He's the owner of Take Control Books, author of many of those books. And we go down and talk about seeing if the iPad could be his full-time device. And you'll be interesting to hear what he talks about and what he decides. So let's go ahead and begin the show and give it a listen to the interview with Joe Kissell. Welcome to In Touch with iOS, and I am your host, Dave Ginsburg. And today I would like to welcome to the show first-time guest and author, owner of Take Control Books, Mr. Joe Kissell. How you doing, Joe?
Hello, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. We actually, I think I was trying to remember how we met. I think we met originally when we were on Chuck's the Mac Voices. I think we did a gift guide, and I think it was the first time
that could very well have been. The past. It just all blurs together.
It does.
There have been so many. I've been on more than 100 of Chuck's podcasts.
Yes,
to say nothing of Mac World Expo and Mac Tech conferences and all the things for going back so long. So it's all a blur, but it's all good.
Yeah, and I remember, of course, you're very active. And I appreciate that, and told you that before the being active with this Apple user groups. And of course, I'm president of the Suburban Chicago Apple users, and we had you on. One time you did your digital legacy book and reviewed that. That was a great session and real good stuff. And of course, you've got all kinds of great books. And boy, after Worldwide Developers Conference came on, I was just reading your blog, and you've got a lot of work to do.
Oh man, yeah. Well, we've got well over 50 books in our catalog on all kinds of different stuff. Most of it is Apple specific. Some of it's not. Some of it's more generic about, like online privacy is not specifically about Apple, but it all applies to Apple devices.
Right.
And usually, we know that some of our books are going to have to be updated when a new operating system comes out. That's just normal. But the big thing this time was on the Mac side. Catalina Big Sur doesn't look anything like Catalina or like its predecessors. It's just like every screenshot is now going to be outdated. So all of our screenshots have to be redone. And a lot of things just are, it's not that just they look different. I mean, they do, of course, but some of the things also behave differently. And so the number of books that we will have to update to cover this new stuff it's a really long list. And it's going to take us a while to get through them, but we will get through them.
No, you guys have amazing books. I've always supported Take Control. We'll always definitely make sure I have links in the show notes for everything you guys do. I almost use it as a Bible to, especially Josh Jenners does such a great job with tvOS and Apple TV and iOS, iPad OS. He's just a great author you have, and you got a great team of authors to really review that stuff.
Josh is particularly affected by these new changes because he has, he does our annual book on iOS and iPad OS, so he'll do that, of course. But also he has to revise his Apple TV book, and also he has to revise his Apple Home Automation book because there's changes in HomeKit. Also, he has to revise his notes book. Now, to be fair, not a whole lot has changed in notes, but a couple of small things have changed in notes. So he has more work to do than most of our authors.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll definitely have lots of links and get you guys to go purchase some of these great titles. There are a lot of great information. So I don't need to say too much more about that, but welcome to the show. Really appreciate you being here. And then we had a good discussion here. I thought it was a great topic, and I did cover this a couple of years ago. I did a presentation at MacStock about making iPad your full-time device, but it was about 4 years ago, I think it was, if I remember correctly. So I think lots changed in 4 years. So I wanted to kind of see where you're at with the iPad. I know, obviously, being a writer, the Mac is a really important device, but is it possible the iPad could fit into not only your writing, but your business as well? Do you have, what current iPad do you have right now?
My current iPad is a 10.5-inch iPad Pro. Now I've had 5, 6 iPads over the years. And I really have my eye on one of the newer models. Not like the iPad I have is fine, but I really want to use the new Apple Pencil.
Mhm.
And I have to have the new iPad. Sorry, honey, I had to buy a new iPad because I needed the new pencil.
Yes.
But I'm always going to want the next thing. You did the thing 4 years ago on using an iPad as a full-time device. My history with that topic, or let's say a very similar topic, goes back 10 years.
Okay.
To when the iPad first came out,
I own
and
it.
I was living in France at the time, and I think I can't prove this, but I think I was the first person in France to have an iPad, because they went on sale in the United States like a few weeks before they appeared in France. Immediately when they went on sale, Tanya Angst went out and bought one and gave it to a friend of hers who was leaving like the next day to come to Paris on vacation. So the friend hand delivered this brand new iPad to me. And later that month, my wife gave birth to our first son, and we had the iPad, the original iPad, in the delivery room to play music on. So I was with the iPad from the very, very beginning. And as soon as the iPad came out, a bunch of Take Control authors started writing books about it. We had a book on iPad basics, and we had a book on networking and security, and we had a book on media, and then we had my book, which was called Take Control of Working with Your iPad. So my job was to figure out how you actually get productive stuff done with this, how you do your day-to-day work that you would have previously done on a Mac or whatever. So I was into that from like day one. So I did that book. A little bit later on, we turned that into a course, like a 4 part live video course. That was back
Remember
before
that.
that was a cool thing to do. And so I was, back 10 years ago, I was trying to figure out how on earth an iPad user can do some of the things that, back then stuff was really hard to
It
do.
was. It was. I remember.
I talked about some pretty fancy, tricky, hacky kinds of ways to get your iPad to jump through hoops. And a lot of those things are thankfully like way way easier now. So
yes.
it has become like vastly simpler. There were things before where like, well, the only way you can really do this is in an iPad is to you use like a VNC app. You're really running something on your Mac or Windows PC, but you're doing kind of screen sharing, and you're using the iPad as a terminal. So a lot of that stuff has gone away. Multitasking has gotten a lot better. We have trackpad support, all that stuff, and multiple windows and all that stuff. Well, so I did this, and one of the first questions I had for Adam and Tanya, because at that point I wasn't running Take Control, I was just another author, writing books all the time, and I'm like, hey, can I write my next book on my iPad? And they said no. And I'm like, wait, what? Really?
I didn't know that though. Really? Wow.
We're writing all these books about the iPad, but I can't write my book on my iPad. And well, there's kind of a story there. There's a reason. It wasn't just like a capricious choice, like, nah, you can't do that. No, it wasn't like anything like that at all. It's like we use certain tools in the Take Control world, and because we're trying to get a certain end result. We're not just spitting out text. We have very carefully, nicely formatted books, and we have certain style elements and layout elements and things we got to do. And when we're writing and editing books, we have to use things like change tracking and comments. And when we're producing books, we have to get them in all these different formats, and like everything has to be just right. We really agonize over like what's going to be the experience of somebody reading this book.
Yeah.
And to make a very long story short, and we might get into some more of the details later, the tools that, the capabilities did not exist to make the end result that we wanted on an iPad. And I should just use any old text editor and write a first draft of text on an iPad, sure. But as soon as it has to start going back and forth with an editor and the publisher and the tech reviewer and all that, the whole thing kind of broke. So when I took over Take Control Books a few years ago, I revisited this question. Okay. Now that I'm making the rules, now can we do it? And because I love my iPad, and it's so lightweight, and the battery lasts forever, and it's so much nicer to have with you in bed or whatever on an airplane than a Mac. I mean, I love my Macs too, but I thought, can't I do this now? And as I started looking into it, I mean, we're closer. We're a lot closer than we used to be. That is for darn sure. But we're not quite there yet. For the things that I need to do as a writer, and for the things that we need to do in our business, and I'm so jealous of people that I follow on Twitter, and a lot of my, my colleagues who do most or all of their work on an iPad. I'm like,
Wow.
I want that. I want to be one of you, and I've wanted to be one of you for 10 years. But even today, there's stuff that I have to do every day that I can't do in my iPad, and it frustrates me. Will we ever get there? I don't know, but that difference between where we've gotten to and where we need to be for my work is sort of what I want to talk about.
So I can tell you, I have the Magic Keyboard I have an iPad 11 inch, the 2018. I did not, because you know me real well, but I'm one to probably upgrade everything all the time, which I'm crazy. Our co-host Warren Sklar, he buys everything brand new like every other minute, and I always tease him for that. But in this case, he actually decided as well. We stuck with the iPad Pro 11 inch from 2018 because it works with the Magic Keyboard. Now I can attest to the fact that the Magic Keyboard is wonderful. It feels nice and comfortable. I have the 11 inch version, but I don't know. Maybe for your needs, you might maybe want to take a look at the 12.9 inch because it's obviously a bigger screen. Keyboard will give you a lot more comfort level as far as that goes. The pencil, amazing. I mean, I was going to even talk about that a little bit about what they're going to be adding to from iOS or iPad OS 14 with the scribble and and being able to write in the URLs and that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be a really big game changer for writing too for you, I would think.
It could be. And whenever I buy an iPad, I agonize over the size. I mean, at one point I had an iPad mini, which I loved. That was great. That for my use cases in many ways, that was just right. And when it came time to buy my first iPad Pro, I'm like, do I buy the littler one or the bigger one? Because I have right now, I am standing in front of an iMac Pro. And at the moment, I have just the one 27-inch monitor, but at some points in the past, I've had two side by side. And I love lots of screen real estate. Yeah. When it comes to an iPad, the benefits of all that great screen real estate that you get with the larger model are somewhat at odds with my desire for portability. So, there are trade-offs there. And to be sure, bigger screens would be a help in what I do. But it's like necessary, but not sufficient. Like that would be useful, but that's not all I need.
Yeah. I mean, I think the size is a difficult decision, really. For what I do, I thought the 11 inch was perfect for me. I'm a geek at heart. We all are, I guess. And I like to have everything. I probably would still continue to keep a Mac and an iPad and an Apple Watch. I mean, I own every single device. So, So I think size is always going to be a challenge to what to decide on where that goes. But one of the things I want to kind of ask you is how does your workflow how does your workflow work as far as what apps you use and how would you be able to adapt? I mean, now with Apple Silicon coming, I think iOS and iPad OS apps are going to be almost singular between Mac and iPad OS. So, I mean, I would hope some of the apps that you use might come that place that way.
Yeah, well, this is kind of a separate discussion, but with Apple Silicon and with Catalyst, there are all these good ways that you can take stuff that works on an iPad and move it over to the Mac. But none of these tools really helps things go in the other direction. And that's part of the problem is I have, there are apps that I am heavily dependent on that have been Mac apps for, in some cases, as long since 1984. I mean, going back a long time.
Yeah.
And it is not a trivial exercise to port a Mac app to the iPad even today. It's a really, really, really big deal. So let me talk about some of the apps we use. So of course we use a word processor to write our books. And in the beginning, in the old times, we started using Microsoft Word, and we used that for a few years. And we didn't like it, but it was okay. And then we switched to Pages, and Pages was okay for a while. But then you might remember there was a time at which Apple just kind of rewrote Pages. It just kind of threw out the old version and in with the new version. And at that point, the new version sucked for a while. It lacked a lot of important features. So so we switched to Nicest Writer Pro. Now, Nicest Writer has been around for a very, very, very long time. I wrote a book on it back in 1996. I used to work for the company. And it's a very, very, very nice word processor. It is heavily automatable, has terrific macros, has an amazing find and replace. And so we found that to be better than Word or Pages for the kind of writing and editing we do. And for at least the PDF versions of our book, we could do the preliminary layout right in Nicest Writer Pro. So that was very nice. Now, there are, of course, oodles of writing apps on the iPad. There's Pages, there's Word, there's Scrivener, there's so many text editors, whether they're Markdown or rich text or whatever. But there aren't any that have all the features we need, at least not yet. Pages is getting closer all the time. Pages is not, it used to be terrible. Now it's not terrible anymore. There are some things that it can't do. And, one of the things Pages can, for example, create EPUB ebooks. And that's one of the formats that we sell. They just aren't great EPUBs. They're okay. They're not what we want. And so having a tool to make things in just, very specifically just the way we want it is a big deal. It can make PDFs. Of course, PDF is easy, except they're not PDFs that we would feel okay selling. On a Mac, we'll do an initial save as PDF from Nicest Writer Pro, and then we have about 10 other steps that we go through using, various, old weird utilities and command line tools. And, we have this certain thing that can only be done in Acrobat Pro. There's literally no other software we can use. We have all these steps, and only once we've gone through all these steps do we have an okay PDF. And then when it comes to EPUB and MobiPocket, the Kindle, the older Kindle format, we use command line tools. So I've got all these, all these command line tools, and then scripts and macros and Apple scripts and automator, actions and all this automation stuff, keyboard maestro macros to tie it all together. So on a Mac, I could take a markdown file, select it, press a keystroke combination, and in 5 seconds, I've got an EPUB version and a MobiPocket version of that file. It's wonderful. It is. I mean, it used to take us weeks to get our books converted to these different formats. Now it's like that. Can't do that on an iPad. There's no command line, we use automation so heavily. Shortcuts is great. There are some apps that now use JavaScript for automation. That's nice too, but there still isn't anything on the iPad that can do all the stuff we do with the command line and Apple Script and all these custom tools. So, and I will mention too, we've switched writing environments before, and we would do it again if there were something on the iPad that were comparable to, let's say, InDesign or Quark Express.
Okay.
If you look at, page layout apps in the App Store for the iPad, you're going to find stuff to make photo albums and posters. You're not going to find stuff that can make books. So the people who are developing apps for the iPad seem to be really focused on certain areas, like photography, graphics, animation, and that's all great. Music is fantastic on the iPad, but apps to make books just kind of aren't there. And even, I would be willing to endure the pain of switching from our current tools to other tools. I've done that before. I'm sure I'll do it again. But we're still looking for the right end result. And until I can get the right end result, that's kind of a non-starter.
So that sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a tougher sell for you because of those tools, is trying to be able to convert to the iPad because you've got so many tools that you're so used to using all these years. So we got to find somebody that's going to be making these tools work better for you, so you have a much better workflow in order to do that. So,
and you just mentioned the word workflow, and I realized I didn't entirely answer your earlier question. Like I mentioned the tools we use, but just to say a few more words about that. So the way things currently work in our world is an author writes a draft of a book in Nicest Writer. And we'll put it in a shared folder. Right now we're using Dropbox. Maybe one day we'll switch to iCloud Drive now that they can do that. And then the editor will pick it up and make a copy so that we can go back. We have a sort of a little manual version control system we use. But basically make a copy and put a new number on it. Editor will go mark up whatever changes need to be made, whatever comments they have. And then the editor and the author go back and forth as many times as it takes to resolve everything and make it good. And then sometimes another person will come in, a tech reviewer or someone else to verify, technical accuracy. And once all those people are done with it, then the book comes to my desk, and I'll go check out a copy. Then I have a series of higher level stuff that I go through, mainly to ensure consistency among our different books, but also to check for some little fiddly technical things that editors and authors really shouldn't have to worry about. And then we go through this production process. We create the PDF, and then we have this long series of steps we go through to make it a good PDF, and then we create. We go through this separate process to create the EPUB and Kindle versions. And then, of course, we have to upload all these to different places and with different names and different formats. You can do many of those things on an iPad. We have the Files app now, so we can work in shared folders. It's possible. And there are FTP or whatever kinds of file transfer tools. You can upload stuff to different places. What you can't do is what I do today is I run an automator action. Like I select the PDF, and the automator action is like, okay, I need to copy this PDF to this place on this server, and but when I do that, it has to have a different name that follows a certain format. Then I have to copy it also to this folder with this name, and this folder with this name, and this folder with this name. And I have to make sure that I replace this thing, but not that thing. And then, I'll also have to zip up a version of that and give that zipped version a special name and put that in this place. And it just all happens, and it's easy. Again, shortcuts could probably almost get close to that, but it's it's
just not there yet with them.
Yeah.
Because my gosh, shortcuts are just an amazing tool on iOS and iPadOS. I would think you could get something automated to what you do, because creating PDFs is all automated now with shortcuts and I do it all the time. I'm creating PDFs from say websites or whatever, but obviously I'm not into publishing like you are. So I know it's a little different process.
Yeah. One of the things that, it's for me, it's a slightly annoying additional step. It's annoying because I have to use Acrobat to do it. And that is the only reason I need to own Acrobat.
Yeah.
All things being equal, I'd really rather just not. But we have a lot of readers who are blind or vision impaired, and they need to have special accessibility tags added to the PDF to help them understand the structure of it. You know, it's not just there's this sentence and then this line and this word, but what's a heading? What's a subheading? What's the structure of the book? And so Acrobat Pro has a command that just figures it out and adds these tags to the PDF for us. And I would feel embarrassed to sell a book without that. But but I know of no tools on iOS that can do that. So
yeah, so it sounds like I got a tough sell here to make this your full time device. So a lot of the stuff that you guys do. You did mention file management. I mean, by far the Files app is just gangbusters. It's so much far advanced than going back to the first iPad. I like you owned the first iPad, and boy, that was I was excited when I had that iPad for the first time, and boy, thinking back of what that did and now what we could do now is it's light years ahead. So I think file management in itself is going to be a huge improvement. At least that part of the liking of being able to go with iPad, and also the ability of using external storage. But now with the new iPads having USB-C, you can hook up a little device. I mean, I got one of these small little drives here, and I'll show you on camera here, the SanDisk, and that's a USB-C. I mean, I can plug that right into my iPad. I got 1 terabyte worth of data. I don't have to spend all this money on an iPad that, when you buy a 1 terabyte iPad, you're spending $1,500 for an iPad.
I have the 2 terabyte version of the same thing.
Do you? Okay, cool. I know everybody loves these drives because I'm showing is a SanDisk, the Extreme. We were talking about actually these the other night with Chuck, and because we were at his live show, and Jeff Gammon put it up. I said, "Well, I gotta pull mine up," and then Chuck had said that they're on sale right now for $136. Like, okay,
oh really? Yeah, mine is it's somewhere. It's in some corner of this office or someplace.
So having that ability, I think, is become a huge plus as far as that part of the management of utilizing the iPad. I mean, when I talked about it, it was hard.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to talk about Notes apps a little bit. You mentioned about using Notes apps. I also did another presentation at my next talk about that too. So I've been pretty topical with our discussion today. Obviously Apple Notes is great. I've been using that a lot. And I work in the corporate environment. So Microsoft's OneNote is a very good program. And then you got Good Notes. So there's a lot of good note-taking programs that could potentially help in the way you work as far as writing as at least I would think, but because there are some good tools for that.
Yeah, I mean, the type of writing that we do is very, I don't want to say peculiar, but different. I've written a lot of books, and I wrote a number of books before I started with the Take Control kind of thing. In the conventional publishing world, almost everybody uses Word, or at least, you got to use something that's going to, save in Word format. And then, the editors all do their thing. And then once everybody's kind of agreed on the text, then it goes to the layout people, and the layout will pour that into InDesign, usually, sometimes Quark or whatever tool they use. And then they're going to fiddle with, the graphics go here and the sidebars go there. And, you're going to have to cut a paragraph out of this section so that we can fit this thing on this page. And then once everything is laid out and all the back and forth has happened with the author and the editor to get that okay, then it'll start going into print production. With Take Control, all of us who were initially part of this enterprise, Adam and Tanya, and the people from the very beginning, Glenn Fleischman and Matt Newberg and Kirk McElhearn and so forth, we all came from that world, the traditional conventional publishing world, and so we were all used to that, but we also kind of hated it. We decided that it worked best for what we were trying to accomplish, for the authors and the editors to work in a WYSIWYG environment. So we don't put off the the layout to the last step that somebody else does. We do the layout as we're writing the book. And the reason is so that we can be fast. If let's say we have a sidebar and this, because the way of our layout is designed, a sidebar has to fit on one page. Well, you could write in plain text, or you could write in Scrivener, in Markdown, or whatever, and you wouldn't know exactly how long your sidebar is going to be when it's laid out. That would be like, multiple steps ahead in the process. And so, months later, when somebody decides, oh, actually, this sidebar is 2 sentences too long, then you'd have to go back and revise it. But if you're writing and you can see, oh, well, it either fits on the page or it doesn't. This graphic is too big. Let me crop it a little bit or whatever. So we decided that because we wanted to work fast, a WYSIWYG environment was much better for us. The advantage of this was also that we can revise things more easily. So if Apple goes and changes something, which of course they're always doing, we go, oh, we gotta revise the book. Can we have a revision out, I don't know, tomorrow? Yes, we can, because it's that fast. The author can write and the editor can edit and I can produce, and we can turn around and update sometimes in as little as a day. But if it has to go through all these different people and processes and, change the text and then go redo the layout and all this kind of stuff, it's impossible. I say all that to say that even though Notes is great and I use Notes all the time and all the other things, OneNote and other things like that, it doesn't really suit our needs because we have decided not to divorce the text from the layout. We've decided to treat those as a unit. And there are very few tools on the iPad that can do that. And again, there are some, it's just that the ones that can do that have other deficiencies that I'm not too happy about. Every time Apple announces, oh, we're working on a new version of Pages, like we know a new version of Pages is coming because they're going to incorporate some of the stuff that from iBooks author that has died. Right. I keep thinking, well, maybe this time Pages will finally acquire those last few bits that we would actually need, and could be, I don't know, maybe, but yeah.
Let's hope. I mean, I think with the big changes with the Big Sur and everything going that's happening right now, I like to see that Apple is going to be focusing more on Pages than ever before, because like you said, that dark time when they really removed everything and it basically made it a useless piece of software. When they did all that, I remember that. It was horrible. I mean, and you got competition like Microsoft Word, which continues to evolve. Again, I work in the corporate environment, and Word is everywhere, and you have to. Microsoft, give them credit. They've done very well with Office, and they've kept up on things. Other thing I think interesting you said about with Adobe. I mean, Adobe has been so focused on getting Photoshop as a full-time app on the iPad. Why not the rest of the suite? I hadn't seen it. Acrobat, InDesign, Illustrator. I mean, all of the Creative Cloud apps. They should really be iPad versions too, because I know designers really love working on iPads. I've worked with them firsthand. And I don't understand why Adobe hasn't thought of that. They can't even get the Photoshop app, and they showed that at the event last year, 2019. So it was crazy.
And of course, I understand why Photoshop would be the priority.
Sure.
And I would imagine that Illustrator would be the next priority. I further imagine that InDesign will be relatively low on the list. But if Adobe announced tomorrow, guess what? This fall, we're bringing InDesign, like a fully powered InDesign, to the iPad. I'd be like, well, I guess Adobe is going to start getting some of my money because that changes things. And it's not like InDesign has its limitations and faults too, but that would really, really change things for us.
And of course, they demoed it during the WWDC last week, that they have already brought the apps into Big Sur and to be supportive of the Apple Silicon. So who knows? It's possible. Yeah. Adobe might be looking at something that isn't really hasn't been discussed yet. But Same thing with Acrobat. I would love to see Acrobat
yeah,
Pro come to the
sure.
iPad. It's a powerful enough app, and again, I know it's hard to, folks like we support you've written books on Smile software, PDF Pen Pro. I mean, it just doesn't compare to what Adobe Acrobat Pro does and what you guys need.
Yeah, and of course, I do wonder also, could there someday be, or would there someday be, something that's comparable to Catalyst that would help people with existing Mac apps bring them to the iPad? It's knowing what I know about development and the frameworks and APIs and so forth on the Mac. I'm kind of skeptical that will ever exist, but man, that would help. That would help things a lot. And that would also help with even just with developers bringing stuff forward to, Apple Silicon and shinier, newer versions of Mac OS in the future. So one of the other tools we use, the one I alluded to that's been around since literally 1984, is Panorama. Panorama is a database, and we use Panorama for, among other things, tracking all of our royalties. So, we sell books direct. We sell books through, the Apple Bookstore and through Amazon and Google Play and various other places. And every month, I have to download all these different, sales reports in different formats. This one has an Excel spreadsheet, and this one has a CSV file, and this one has something else, and they're all in different formats. And I have to make sense of all of them. Do a lot of really complicated stuff to make sure that ultimately every author gets the correct amount of royalties, and it's all broken down and explained very clearly. And not just that they get the right number of dollars, but that they get beautifully formatted reports that break it down, for this title from this venue, you sold this many copies, and this is the cost, and this is what the taxes were, and blah, 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 and this is how much you got. So we use Panorama for that. And of course, that it's been around forever, and it's a wonderful tool. I know that Jim Ray, who's the developer, would love to someday bring it to the iPad. But I also know that it's a gigantic undertaking. It's just an astonishing amount of work. And so when I think about this other essential thing that I need to do to run my business, I'm like, well, I mean, there are a couple of databases that run on the iPad. You don't have a lot of choices there. Yeah, there's FileMaker Go. And there's a couple of others. Theoretically, one of them might be able to do what we need, but it would require a lot of a lot of design and programming and expense, and it's not impossible, but it would be a huge hassle. So that's another thing that even if we got the actual book production happening on an iPad, that's one thing that for the time being I would have to use a Mac for. But in fairness, I want to say that there are lots of things that I can do today that are important parts of running my business that I didn't used to be able to do on an iPad. I mean, I can do all my accounting on my iPad. With QuickBooks, I can pay my bills. I can pay our authors, manage all of our invoices, all that kind of stuff. That's no problem. I can manage our website and do all the things involved in the website from my iPad. Now, I mean, of course, it's one thing to say, you can go into WordPress and do whatever. It's another thing to say, I need to do some programming. I need to get in there and fix some code and fix some CSS, and that is possible. It's painful because like when I'm doing stuff like that, I'm doing some coding, I'm doing some design work. Well, I'm going to have like BB Edit open where the actual code is, and then I'm going to have like 2 or 3 or 4 different browsers that I'm always switching among. Let's try it here, try it here, try it here, try it here. And it's a little awkward to do in an iPad, but it's at least possible. Do my banking on the iPad, email, social media, image editing. So there are many tasks that I have to do as a business owner, and that are sort of components of our process that I'm really delighted are possible on an iPad. I just want it all. Is that so wrong? I just want it all.
There's no wrong with that. We all want it all. So it sounds like conclusion here. It looks like we can't make iPad your full-time device, at least not yet. But it sounds like it's getting very, very close.
Certainly, I would expect within another 10 years.
You think 10 years? Okay.
Well, I mean, we've had 10 years so far. No, I mean, I hope it's a lot less than that. Yeah. I would love to have, all of those capabilities, as well as be able to plug in a 27-inch monitor and have all of my multiple windows and apps just where I want them, and just the right sizes and orientations and all that. That might come too.
Yeah, they are already experimenting being able to hook up an external monitor to an iPad because it's USB-C. I know it takes a little bit of conversion and converting the device to have an HDMI connector to connect to it, but at least it's the other way around. You could, using a Sidecar or any other emulator for a Mac, so you could potentially use it
right
as a reasonable device to bring things over and have touch, because that we're talking about that too, is being able to access things and use the pencil for a lot of things that the Mac can't do because it doesn't have touch or pencil and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, so I mean it's fine. Like, I have Macs. I got an office full of Macs, and I got I got all the stuff. I got everything from the Watch to the iMac Pro, and I have all the things, and it's fine. And I think that I will continue to have all the things for a long time, and I will enjoy having them. But I would be ever so happy if I could get more of my productive work done while sitting in bed with my iPad. not that I want to really spend all day in bed, but I'm just saying, there are so many things about it that I love, and although we're closer, I would like to be all the way there.
Okay. Well, you've got some great book titles. We talked about it. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of the great stuff that's going to be coming out from iOS 14, iPad OS 14, and Apple TV. And like we just talked about, Apple, are you going to look anything different with Apple Watch as far as?
Yeah, so we do have a book on Apple Watch, and I talked to Jeff Carlson, the author, and he is definitely planning to update it for the fall. One of the things that makes us a little bit nervous is we have no idea when the next hardware is going to come out.
That's true.
We know what's going to be in the next version of Watch OS. We don't know when, if or when new hardware is going to come out, and then what that might do. And what I think we're both leaning toward is we'll go ahead and update the book as soon as we can after Watch OS 7 now ships. And then if and when new hardware comes out, we'll see if we have to update it further.
Awesome.
But so yeah, Apple TV, Apple Watch, of course, we'll be writing about Big Sur as well, and many, many apps.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I think everybody knows that you just go ahead and tell everybody how to get to your sites. And I know you had a brief, you got a nice discount coming on right now. If you could let everybody know.
Yeah. So to get to our site, you will need to find a web browser. Now, this very, very unusual and rare app can be found on most devices. And go to takecontrolbooks.com. Until July 8th, we're participating in this Summerfest promotion. So that means if you enter the coupon code Summerfest 2020, you'll save 30% on all of our books. You only have until July 8th, but I hope you'll take advantage of that. And we have lots of books and all kinds of stuff that's of interest to any Apple user. And there will be more very soon.
I can't wait. I mean, I like I said, a lot of your books are Bibles to me. I mean, and I read them religiously, and I use them to talk about what's in touch with iOS. I mean, because we all have to share amongst each other as far as learning and understanding what these products have to do with, and we definitely want to get people out there to read your books and to check them out. And I will continue to support you and support what you guys have to offer, because I think it's.
Well, I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Been a long reader for a long time, and we'll keep going. So,
thank you.
Well, I guess that's it. Joe, again, appreciate you being on the show, and we had a great time. And I guess the final conclusion here is the iPad is not going to be your full-time device, at least not yet.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
My thanks to Joe Kissell for being here. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I did. And you learned a little bit more about the iPad and could it really be your full-time device? And it was definitely an interesting conversation. That's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter @intouchwithios. You can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts and many others, but better yet, go to our website at intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter @DaveG65. Thanks again to Joe Kissell for being here today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and talk to you again soon.